Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order at 6:31. This is the Southwick Town Granville Regional School District. Tonight's limited agenda, we're going through the FY22 budget presentation. If there are any questions related to the budget presentation this evening, you have two ways of sending in your questions. You can use the superintendent email address and make sure you include your name and address and your budget question in the content of the email. This evening, we are also going to use the Q&A feature of Zoom. Again, please make sure if you put in a question through the Q&A feature, you include your name and your residency along with your question. We will not be addressing any other questions that aren't budget related this evening. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Willard and Business Manager Steve Presnell.
Thank you, Chairman Houle, and thank you for everybody who's attending tonight. I really wish we were in person. This is usually a nice presentation to get a lot of the community members together, but COVID style, we're going to do it via Zoom. And so I'd like to first start off with saying welcome and thank you. So we're going to start off this year's FY22 budget presentation with the projected timeline of how the regional school budget, the process that we follow yearly. We did start a week or two later this year due to a later than usual cherry sheet coming from the governor. And we presented a draft budget on March 2nd to our school committee. The following week, we did a follow-up meeting with our FinCom subcommittee to get further information and further clarity on how they'd like us to move forward with our budget. Tonight is our public hearing for the public to look at our budget, to ask us questions about it. On March 30th, the final budget will go to the school committee for a vote. We know that the House Ways and Means budget usually comes out in April, and then we go to the three towns for their annual town meetings in May for approval of the school operational budget and also for our capital borrowing. And I always like to start off our budget presentation with educational initiatives. I think it's really important for the community to know that whatever we're working on in a school district, it's aligned to the initiatives that we're working on in a school district. As you know, over the past few years, we've seen more and more students come to us at the pre-K, K1 level with social emotional issues. And a few years ago, we started working towards becoming a trauma-informed school district pre-K to 12. Throughout the process, we realized we did need some additional social emotional supports at Woodland School to support our students, and we're going to be continuing that initiative this year. You'll also see that we are starting year one of our literacy program implementation in our kindergarten through 6th grade. The teachers actually were able to pilot the program this year because we were able to purchase the materials at the end of last school year. However, we're going to be really starting our personal professional development on how to best use these new materials to improve instruction and reading and writing. We also have the UDL, the Universal Design for Learning at grades 7 through 12, which is really just a lesson design on thinking about all learners before you plan a lesson and not thinking about how to adapt it throughout the lesson, but doing what's best for all students in your lesson design. This year, as you all know, technology was a big push on the part of the school district, and try as we may, as early as we ordered our computers, we've really struggled with getting our computer order in that we ordered last May. So kudos to our technology department and to Director of Finance and Operations, Mr. Presnell, and thank you to Wally Computer, who has really worked closely with us to try and get us laptops in the hands for our students. And it's exciting to say that our 4-year approach to this one-on-one initiative COVID-19 really pushed us into full implementation mode. So we are going to be fully implemented in one-to-one device per child this upcoming school year. And finally, one of the questions that a lot of people are going to ask is about identifying and responding to learning loss due to COVID. This is going to be an initiative brought forth by our special education director and our director of curriculum instruction. They're really working closely on coming up with what they call multi-tiered systems of support, looking at all different ways to reach the students where they are in the classroom and offer support right in the classroom. And also, we are going to be looking at this not as just a one-year fix to get our kids up to where they should be, but we're going to be looking at this multi-tiered system of support over the next few years and adapting and adjusting our instruction, because we know that students are going to come back to us next year at all different places, and we need to be able to take our students where they are and bring them forward. So you'll see some additional positions that we're going to be adding next year with our ESER 2 grant money in order to help support our classroom teachers identify and support certain students with these additional supports. So moving into the budget, I'm just going to go over and give you the quick picture, an overview, and Mr. Presnell will be going into a more detailed approach shortly. But as we all expected and as we all knew, our foundation enrollment, which is what our Chapter 70 is dependent on and what our required local contributions is dependent on, dropped significantly this year. It's been a 94 student drop. We knew that a lot of parents opted to keep their children home this year and do homeschooling. We had parents opt for some private schools. We had parents who just said, I'm just not going to send my child to kindergarten this year, and I'll look at what's available for me next year. So we did anticipate, this is not just a Southwick, Tolland, Granville issue. This is something that is in every school district across the state of Massachusetts right now, a significant dip in the foundation enrollment. The good news to that is we knew we were going to see a decrease into our required local contributions without a significant increase in Chapter 70, because we are a hold harmless school district with our Chapter 70 funds. So one of the things we look at every year, and a slide I bring forward every year, are our fixed cost increases and decreases. This is the first year that I actually added the word decreases to this. Last year, I'm not sure if some of you may remember our conversation in our public hearing. We discussed about some savings we would realize next year in the pension assessments and the group health insurance that we didn't actually see last year with the outsourcing of transportation. So these are some of the savings that we were expecting to see this year. So the actual fixed cost increases to our budget net was $200,000. And I'm going to go over briefly some of the changes that you can expect to see in a budget and the budget that we presented to the school committee 2 weeks ago. So at Woodland School, we eliminated any positions that were unfilled this year and positions that we just didn't feel were necessary at this time, and any of what we call our ESER positions. We received an ESER grant at the beginning of this school year, and we were able to fund some additional positions out of them. So the eliminated positions are the lead teacher that we did not fill, a kindergarten teacher and a kindergarten paraprofessional, and also the receptionist position that we did not refill last year. Positions that we're going to be adding under the ESER 2 grant is either a kindergarten or a first grade teacher and a kindergarten paraprofessional. We have received guidance from the commissioner where he is asking us that if students did not enroll in kindergarten this year, to place them in a first grade age appropriate classroom for the upcoming school year. So we are anticipating and planning for first graders who have had no formal educational experience, and we are planning accordingly with the ESER 2 grant. We also are going to keep our building-based substitute one at Woodland School. This is worked out great this year. They're a licensed teacher at Woodland School, and they were able to fill in if a teacher was under quarantine or if somebody was absent. They knew the routines and how to teach through our platforms. Also with COVID, we are keeping the additional nurse that we hired this year to fill in at both Woodland School halftime, and you'll see her on the powder mill slide as halftime as well. Changes to powder mill. We did eliminate the receptionist position that we did not fill this year. And we did eliminate the 3 class size reduction teachers that we hired under the ESER grant. They were needed due to class space limitations with keeping students at 6 feet. And in order to reopen our schools, we needed to add 3 additional staff. We are not going to need those 3 additional teachers next year. However, in order to accommodate and to address any potential learning losses, we are putting 2 interventionists at Powder Mill School for the upcoming year. There's the other halftime floating nurse, and also we are going to have a building-based substitute at Powder Mill as well. Changes to Southwick Regional School. We did eliminate one technology teacher. The position was not filled this year, and we can accommodate all the technology needs with the staff we have. 2 paraprofessional positions that were not filled this year, and a hallway monitor position were all eliminated. We are adding a special education teacher. Last year we did move a special education teacher out of the regional school down to Woodland School. This year, with the learning loss and potential needs, we just felt that it would be better to put another special education teacher up at the regional school. And positions that we're adding under ESER 2 is 2 building-based substitutes based on the size of the school. Changes to the district. We did eliminate a 0.6 payroll specialist from central office. We did eliminate the substitute custodian that the school committee gave to our supervisor of buildings and grounds this year. And we did eliminate 1 of our district level coaches up at for the 7 through 12. An added position, we did add a computer network technician throughout the course of this school year due to the computer needs, due to the increased use of technology. And now I'm going to just summarize. These are all the ESER 2. You're going to see ESER 2 in Steve's presentation, but I put all the positions in one slide. If people were wondering where the ESER 2 grant money was going, these are the positions in one place that are being funded out of this ESER 2 grant that you'll hear more about in a minute. You can do it.
Superintendent Willard and Chairman Houle, we have a few questions. Not everyone has provided their address, so I'd just like to ask, if you've submitted a question, if you could please be sure to provide your full name and address for the record. And are we ready to move to the next slide, Mr. Presnell? Yes. Okay.
You can go to that other tab. Yep. There you go. Yep. Thank you. Can you enlarge that, Amy? Pick that up to, yeah, that's better. I think folks will be able to see that. So thank you all for joining us this evening. My comments, I'll try to make brief. Superintendent Willard did a great job of taking you through some of the significant changes and the initiatives that the district will be focusing on for next year. This is an interesting year that we're planning for, whereby the total expenditures are actually going down. They're being reduced by $385,000, about 1.5%. That doesn't happen very often. The changes that the superintendent referred to under our fixed costs are play a large role in that. Employee benefits, typically health insurance premiums going up by anywhere from a few percent to, in some cases, double digits in years past. This year, we're actually seeing a 0.5% decrease, as well as a premium holiday that's been granted by the Mass Interlocal Insurance Association Health Benefits Trust. So that was great news. We were very happy with that. We also have a few less employees on that plan. Our transportation services being outsourced to the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative, so resulted in a few less employees on the plan. Also, the pension plan with a significant decrease. And again, most of that attributable to the outsourcing of our transportation operation. On the revenue side, really what we're looking at for assessments from the 3 towns is the minimum local contribution or required local contribution that is set per the foundation budget Chapter 70 formula, which is done by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. The numbers that they've shared with us at this point relate to Governor Baker's House 1 budget proposal. Typically, our district goes ahead and adopts a budget based on those House 1 numbers. And usually the timing with respect to either the House or the Senate versions of the budget, it just doesn't work out. So we have to rely on based on the schedule that we have for adopting a budget. We have to go with the governor's proposal. So we have the required local contribution, the non-discretionary charges that the 3 towns are responsible for. That would be things like transportation is the biggie in that category as well. And in addition, the capital assessment, which is essentially the debt service for the capital borrowing that we do for both our annual capital improvement projects and the massive school building project that was done here back between 2012, 13, and 2016. Anything related to the school building project, we've continued. We started many years ago highlighting those things in green. So you have the cost, the debt service costs associated with the school building project debt in that green bar under expenditures, and then scrolling back up, you can see the assessments that are passed on to the 3 towns that relate to that debt service below. That number pretty much stays the same every year. There's some slight variations based on the amortization schedule that was adopted when the bonds were sold. That will change probably in about, I want to say it's about 18 years from now, where some of the debt will actually start to drop off, and it'll be a reduced amount. But we've got a ways to go before we get to that milestone. Continuing on the revenue side, Medicaid reimbursement, we're projecting the same number, no increase or decrease as we have for the current year. Regional transportation reimbursement, we're expecting a decrease. The number we're showing here is based on the governor's House 1 budget. So we're just going with that. The reality to regional transportation reimbursement is you never really know what you're going to get until it's over. We've had years where we've gone with the governor's budget proposal and we've wound up with $200,000 in additional funding. So we're hopeful that we're going to be something back closer to what we're predicting, or what the cherry sheet indicated for at least the original cherry sheet that the FY21 budget was based on. That would be comparable in FY22, but we don't have any basis for doing that. So we're going with the governor's number at this time. And here, as Superintendent Willard mentioned, the ESER 2 required local contribution subsidy. There's guidance out from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education presently, and the superintendent and I presented to the Southwick Select Board last week on this very topic. There's guidance from DESE, which is told us that member towns of a regional school district, if they are seeing increases to their required local contribution from the current fiscal year to next year, so if that Chapter 70 foundation budget formula is producing an increase to the required local contribution for any town, that town is able to access the ESER 2 grant to offset or eliminate that increase. So we presented that information to the select board last week. It's up to the town to tell us if they want to exercise that reduction. We are assuming in this budget presentation that they will exercise that. And so what's happened is up at the top where you see the Southwick assessment, that number has been reduced by from where it would have been by $86,000. And the $86,000 is made up by the ESER grant. So we're not out any money by the town exercising that option. It is $86,000 less that we will have available to spend out of the ESER 2 grant, but it's coming in instead as a revenue source to offset the decrease in the town assessment. Chapter 70 education aid is basically flat, and charter tuition reimbursement, that's a number that comes off the cherry sheet, as is local to, no, yeah, okay. Yeah, so charter tuition reimbursement is a cherry sheet item. Restricted surplus, so that's our use of our excess and deficiency account. We're increasing that by $75,000. We have anticipating a very healthy E&D balance at the end of this fiscal year because of some depressed spending in certain categories across the district. We mentioned the outsourcing of the transportation operation to the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative. Collaborative purchased vehicles from us during fiscal year, well, at the end of fiscal year 2020 and during fiscal year 2021. They're leasing the remainder of the fleet until such time as the debt service is paid off for those vehicles, at which time they will become the property of the collaborative. So the lease schedule has the collaborative paying us $180,000 for those vehicles, and those funds help to offset the assessment that would otherwise be going to the three towns for debt service. And then some smaller local tuition, our pre-K revolving account, and fee charges. Dropping down on the expenditure side, a decrease to general administration. a lot of some accounts going up, some decreasing. Significant changes there in with the elimination of the academic coach and the shifting of our substitute teachers out of the general administration category to the individual school-based budgets. That's something that we are moving to this year based on how we have to report to DESE. So we have to report substitute teacher wages by school and grade level, and therefore the need to track that by school. So it's no longer in the general admin budget. We mentioned employee benefits already, significant decrease there. Tuition for our vocational students who go out of district, the school choice students who go out of district, and charter school students, also vocational students who remain in district through the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative's Career Tech program. The number going down, some of that be due to the fact that we're paying for a slightly larger portion or percentage of those tuition costs out of our school choice revolving account. The collaborative number did actually decrease slightly, as did the anticipated tuition at Westfield Technical Academy for the students going out of district, but not to the tune of the $235,000. So that's a shifting of some costs over to our revolving account. District-wide maintenance, very nominal change there. Transportation, a very nominal change. And that includes both regular ed and special ed, tracking close to what we were predicting it would by moving to the collaborative. Insurance, we did get hit with some higher insurance premiums this year on the property and workers' comp side. So we've bumped that number up to accommodate for that. Technology lease, the superintendent spoke to that as well. The $200,000 figure would represent full implementation of a 4-year lease program with that's actually been accelerated into, we've managed to do it in 3 years, and that was helpful to deal with all the remote learning and hybrid learning that took place this year. The $200,000 figure is it's less, considerably less than the number that we had originally predicted that lease program would come in at. I believe we were up in the $240,000 range, so it did come in lower. We've talked about debt service. You do see a drop to the capital improvement debt service. That's attributable basically to the fact that for the current year, so the budget we were presenting last year, in response to the concerns over the impact of the coronavirus on our member municipalities, the school committee and the district opted to go with a much reduced capital improvement program, and the effect of that is playing out in with the first, which would be the first year of debt service payments on this year's projects, being less, quite a bit less than the last year of the projects that are coming off, finishing up this year, finishing up the debt service, that is. So Woodland School, seeing a reduction there. Again, most of that attributable to the staffing changes that the superintendent referenced earlier. Powder Mill School, a very modest increase. The Southwick Regional School, again, 1.15% increase. That would normally be just through the personnel changes, would typically be up closer to around 3%. And special education also at 1.4%. So a total appropriation figure of $25,822,130, or $385,000 less than the current fiscal year, or roughly 1.5%. And below the line, you can see the various grants that we receive. We've left certain grants out of here. We were showing you all of our title grants that are recurring, our METCO grant, the IDEA, which is for special education. And there have been a number of other grants that the district received this year in response to the COVID pandemic. Some of them have expired. Some of them are in the process of expiring in June. Some of them have the ability to be extended. The big one, the new pot of money that was introduced for FY22, and it's a multi-year grant, so it can be extended out to the end of fiscal year 23, is the ESER 2. It was originally a little over 900,000, but we're showing a reduce, and that's the yellow, bright yellow bar. We're showing a reduced figure because we've applied 86,000 to offset the town of Southwick's required local contribution increase. The superintendent presented a slide that showed what we intend to use the ESER 2 grant for in fiscal year 2022. And so there would be a residual amount left to continue with some of those initiatives that it's being used for in FY23. We anticipate there being an ESER 3 grant available, which will be even more significant than this grant. That is a direct result of the stimulus bill that Congress recently passed. And when that trickles down to local school districts in Massachusetts, we're being told that the number could be a couple of times greater than the ESER 2 funding. So what the guidelines will be on that and how it can be utilized by districts, we're anxiously awaiting that. And then finally, our school choice and circuit breaker revolving accounts. Circuit breaker revolving, counting on 75,000 of that to help with out-of-district special education tuition. And the same for the school choice revolving account. It'll be used for special education, out-of-district tuition, and our out-of-district vocational tuition, and a couple $100,000 of the Lower Pioneer Valley Career Tech tuition. And that's kind of the summary level synopsis of the budget. Do you want me to continue with this, Jen, or do you want to?
Sure. These are just summary slides of some of the talking points that Steve mentioned. This is just a slide you're able to refer to quickly when you're looking for what the FY21 budget was, the FY22, and the decrease. This is just an overview of the required local contributions over years, longitudinal history of what we've received from local contributions. 2021 is a little bit different because this is the first time ever that we can think of where due to COVID, the required local contribution that the governor put forth was at $351,733. But when the budget was finally settled, the required local contributions from the three towns was actually at $13,163. So this year, when the required local contribution went up by $44,000, it was actually on top of the $13,000, not on top of the $351,000 that was approved in the budget.
And if I could just interject something on that last slide. So we talked about Southwick's local contribution increasing by 86,000 and using the ESER funds to offset that increase. But this slide shows a $44,000 increase. That $44,000 is netted, the net result of Southwick's increase of 86,000 and the what turned out to be decreases for both Granville and Tolland to their required local contributions. So Southwick would see no change from its current required local contribution per the officially adopted state budget for this year. And Southwick and Tolland and Granville would see decreases.
Again, this slide is just an overview to refer back to for the FY21 and the FY22 assessments with the decreases listed by each community. These are the Chapter 70 increases that we get. Again, I'm going to mention again that we are in a hold harmless by the state of Massachusetts, which means that we receive a few $1 million, about $4 million in additional state aid than what we're actually entitled to under the chapter, the foundation budget. So the only increases that we actually see is an increase on the per pupil expenditure. This year it's $39,630 based on the number of students that we have in our school district. Again, here's another overview for people to look at home. This is the offsets to the budget that the district is increasing. So this year we did decrease our school choice revolving from FY21 to FY22. We did increase our excess and deficiency. In previous years, before last year, our excess and deficiency contributions were anywhere between $500,000 and $550,000. Last year, we did increase it to $800,000 due to the depressed spending due to the closing of the schools due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And this year we did see in depressed spending, and so we have $875,000 to contribute to this year's budget. Can't guarantee these numbers in future years, but we do our best to bring forward a conservative budget and do our part for fiscal stability in our three communities. And the transportation reimbursement was decreased by $107,000, but again, that is on the governor's cherry sheet. That is not numbers that we put forth, the numbers that the governor has put forth in his cherry sheets. Again, some talking points if people in the community want to ask you about the school budget. You could talk about our ESER 2 grant funded positions. You can talk about how this year they did realize decreased to certain fixed costs that they haven't seen before in the past, that we are in a full implementation of our one-to-one initiative this year at a much faster pace than we had anticipated. As Steve just mentioned, 2 of our 3 towns did see a decrease to the required local contributions. And in this budget we are presenting tonight, we did offset Southwick's required local contribution increase with the ESER 2 grant money. And again, here's some more large offsets to eliminate discretionary assessments to the towns. And Amy, can you, before we go forward, can you just bring forward the assessment worksheet? And you could just scroll to the bottom. And that's where at the bottom it shows in its true form where you can find the information on the assessment worksheet. Mr. Presnell, do you want to discuss the assessment worksheet? You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, so again, the assessments to the 3 towns are most of you probably have heard this before, but made up of 3 real components. After we scroll up to the top, you have the education reform mandated revenues, which are the required local contribution set by the state, and the Chapter 70 aid, also again set by the state budget process. Here you can see the required local contributions for the 3 towns, and you can see highlighted in yellow the ESER 2 relief for FY22 being applied to the Southwick number. So it reduces Southwick's assessment. Again, Tolland and Granville, those numbers on that top line, number one, are represent reductions from the current year's required local contribution. So they're not eligible for the ESER 2 relief funds. And then you have other revenue sources, which would include transportation aid, appropriated E&D, our lease revenue. We've brought in new category this year, again, that ESER 2 money, which we're taking it away. We're able to use it as another revenue source because we're not able to receive it from the town. So it's providing relief to the town, but then the district is able to utilize it in the budget process. And then non-discretionary charges. So the share of transportation that's not paid for through the reimbursement that the Commonwealth provides is a non-discretionary charge to the three towns, apportioned out based on the operating assessment ratios. If I could just maybe take a quick second to mention how the operating budget assessment ratios are determined. For operations, the district relies on a 5-year rolling average of enrollment from town to town. So Southwick obviously with the largest share there. So that number is updated, and that percentage changes annually by usually just a smidgen. On the capital assessment, it's a combination of the, and it gets recalculated every 5th year. It's a combination of enrollment at that time when it's recalculated, and the population in the 3 towns. So we have the non-discretionary assessments of transportation and capital or debt service for capital. All those revenue sources are taken together, added up, and you can see on line 22, total of all revenues and non-discretionary charges, you have your $25,822,130, and the total expenditures per our budget are sitting right now at $25,822,130, and subtract the revenues from the total expenditures, and you have 0. And so if there was a difference there, if revenues were insufficient if the non-discretionary and the net school spending revenues were insufficient to cover the total operating budget, that would line 25 would have a number that would be the discretionary assessment. But as you can see, that's a 0 this year. So we're bringing forward at this point, unless there's some changes between now and the end of the month, we anticipate a fiscal year 2022 budget that has no discretionary assessments. It's all required local contribution and non-discretionary. And you can kind of see the breakdown in that section 5, minimum local contribution, and then non-discretionary charges, and then 0 for discretionary. And at the very bottom are the percentage shares that each town has for both operational and capital. Capital improvement needs, I could talk quickly on that. So we're anticipating something in the vicinity of $385,000. On the IT side, we are looking to complete the second phase of the fiber network upgrade, which was begun last summer. We're utilizing the federal E-rate program to reimburse us for 60% of the costs associated with that program, which is about $190,000. So we'll get 60% back on that. also replacing some network switches and the configuration server, which helps keep the units deployed on our network up to date, running well. We're still debating the need to replace our utility truck that's used here on the campus for maintaining the grounds. So we'll make a decision on that sometime over the next 2 weeks. The parking lot here on Powder Mill Road is in pretty tough shape, and we're hoping to get the authorization to borrow funds to repair, replace that parking lot. And the Southwick Regional School Gymnasium, it's been, can't remember what year it was last done, and it's maybe not quite 20 years, but it's getting close, where the gymnasium floor was sanded and refinished. It gets refinished every year, but eventually you have to resand these floating floors. So we were looking to do that, as well as make some needed repairs to the bleachers and the audio system at the SRS gym. The vestibule at the regional school needs supplemental heating. We've got a potential hazard with pipe freeze in that area. It has insufficient heat. So we're looking to bring heat into that area and prevent kind of a catastrophic failure with freeze-ups of the fire suppression system and any other plumbing that might be running through there. And then lastly, grounds maintenance equipment. We've got about 4 different pieces of equipment that would be used by our grounds maintenance folks to maintain the campus athletic playing fields and other services. So significantly less than what we had been coming to the communities for in the past, when we still had a couple $100,000 in school buses that we were looking to purchase, keep the fleet refreshed. So I think that was our last slide. There are some questions. I don't, Jen, if you wanted to.
Amy, do you want to check the email account first, and then we'll work our way into the Q&A?
Okay, I checked the email account and we do not have any emails. So
Okay.
if we...
Between Jen and Steve, would you like to answer the Q&A questions then?
Sure. So if I look at Select Board Member Moglen's question is, what do you expect as a rebound for foundation enrollment going forward once the pandemic is over? That is a great question. We're anticipating seeing an increase in families coming back from homeschooling. We are anticipating seeing an increase in the number of students enrolling in kindergarten and first grade this year, and that's what we're preparing for. But an overall rebound for a foundation, we're not getting any predictions. People aren't letting us know that they're returning from the private schools that they went to. We're preparing for the same enrollment, same number of classes that we were preparing for at the beginning of the school year pre-COVID, before we had to reduce class sizes. So we are preparing for the same allotment of teachers at every grade level, and we'll go from there. And that kind of piggybacks on another question somebody asked about class sizes next year. I believe Karen DeMeo, 9 Pine Knoll, asked a question about how is does the district expect some kind of safety protocols to remain in effect for FY22, resulting in reduced class size? Overall, we do expect school to be as a back to normal as much as possible. People will be vaccinated. We are anticipating about at least keeping a 3-foot distance between our students. And we are going to follow the state guidance on mask wearing, hand washing, hygiene, social distancing for lunches. We're going to follow whatever the state puts out, and that is what we're going to be following and implementing. Again, how is the district preparing to address students who may not have thrived during remote learning? As I said at the beginning of the presentation, we're using some of our ESER 2 grants to provide a special education teacher up at the regional school, 2 interventionists at Powder Mill School, and we're also looking to put an additional teacher either at kindergarten or first grade, depending on where the enrollment is. Especially if we're anticipating a classroom of first graders coming to us who have not had any formal schooling. So this is not a one-year fix. This is a multi-year approach, and the state is just releasing guidance now on summer academies. And this is what they expect us to work on and use our ESER 2 and our upcoming ESER 3 grant money on, is addressing the learning loss that we have, we anticipate coming next year. But we don't anticipate needing to reduce class sizes next year like we had to this year. Steve, do you want to answer, how does LPVEC charge us for transportation?
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that one. And Linda Bathel had a question on the vehicles that LPVEC did not take. So the collaborative comes up with a cost per bus per day rate. So based on the number of runs that a district has to service their district, they there's a fee that's calculated, and they assign that fee across all of the districts. So so that's how they arrive at their fee. They have a separate fee for regular education versus special education, and that's basically how they do it. Other things like whether a student needs a monitor, if there are trips that are involved, athletic trips or field trips, midday type trips, those things are billed separately on a more on a actual cost basis. With respect to Linda's question, so your timing is interesting, because tomorrow evening we've got a motion before the school committee to authorize disposal of the surplus equipment, surplus vehicles, and we'll be doing that through a sealed bid process that would be advertising, assuming that the committee adopts that motion. So there'll be some information coming out, and we'll post that in all 3 towns, as well as in local media and in our offices here. So if you know anybody who's looking to buy a used, slightly used, more than slightly used school bus, it might be a couple of, there's a van or 2 involved as well. Have them contact us. We can get them the bid information, and they can submit something. In the event that that doesn't work, and we don't have bidders, or there is a vehicle, 1 or more vehicles that are not disposed of that way, we do have quotes for salvage value from local junkyards. So we would identify the high proposal on that and sell them for salvage.
I'm going to have Jenny Sullivan and Robin Gunn jump on. Linda Bathel, 44 Lexington Circle, Southwick, asks, can you further explain the Universal Design Learning Plan? Does this now teach to the average student? If it does, what do you do for the students who are above average?
Yes, I can answer that. Sorry for the light behind me. Hope it doesn't block your view of me. But yeah, Universal Design for Learning is actually great for advanced learners, because the ultimate goal of UDL is for students to become expert learners. And so for our students that are above average or accelerating at grade level content, they have an opportunity to choose some more challenging activities that are planned for ahead of time, so that they're not sitting bored in the classroom. And it helps them to be very independent learners. That is super helpful as they move into college and career, rather than just being sort of passive receivers. So it's actually the whole purpose of UDL is for us to reach a wider range of students with our general curriculum instead of scrambling trying to make up for, in the moment trying to engage these kids that are above or below. And it's really designed to make sure that you can reach the widest range. They call it sort of, instead of like that bowling 1-9 split and down the middle, it's a way to curve around and hit the high, the low, and the middle rather than aiming for the center.
Thank you, Jenny. Rob Stevenson, 10 South Long Yard Road, Southwick, is asking what percentage of Easter 2 grant money will be allocated in FY22?
So it's approximately half would be utilized in FY22, leaving us with a healthy amount that can be utilized in FY23 as well for some of the same things, addressing the learning loss, and hopefully we're not having to spend it on PPE or things like that any longer, which it's available for those things as well, and we'll be utilizing it for such things anticipated in FY22.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to ask the committee if the committee has any questions that they have for either Superintendent Willard or Business Manager, Mr. Presnell.
I have a question. Should I put my video on too? Okay. So we talked about how we wouldn't have to be required to create smaller classrooms due to social distancing now, not having to be distanced as far. But I'm wondering if smaller class sizes, kind of relatively smaller class sizes, are still the plan going forward, just because they're with that great range of learners. Smaller class sizes is always easier to reach more learners kind of more efficiently.
So I could answer that. So we do have, and Ms. Sasso is on here as well. Our class sizes this year were very small due to COVID numbers. We had first grade classes at 10 and 11. They will be back up to more about the 15, 16 level next year, which is still a very small class size relative to other school districts. And we all know that it's super important in our early learners to have the smallest class sizes, because we know that's the foundation, and we know that we need to get our students reading at by grade level. It's not by the end of grade 3 anymore, it's now by the end of grade 1. So we really are focusing a lot of our interventionists. We have 4 interventionists already at Woodland School that are still in the budget next year. They were used this year as classroom reduction teachers, but they will be going back to their intervention roles, 3 of them in reading and 1 of them in math at Woodland School. We did add the 2 interventionists for Powder Mill School to address learning loss. So we are making sure that we do have additional support for the classroom teachers to help support and address these learning issues.
How many interventionists in all will we be up to with the 2 additional?
6.
If I could just add to that, Superintendent Willard, our 2 instructional coaches that are based K-6 are also trained interventionists, and they have been providing intervention this year in absence of having our Title I folks. And they have expressed a desire to continue that over the next 2 years as we're buckling down to really get at this learning loss. So.
That's great news. And 15 and 16 sounds great too.
So my question, this is Pam. I don't think my video is working. So yeah, so I can't turn my video on because my host has stopped it. But my question is related. So, obviously one of our really big initiatives is the multi-tiered system of support. And we do need to identify and then
We lost you, Pam.
We'll circle back to Pam. Any other committee questions?
All anxious to hear that.
Pam, we didn't hear your question, but I will have Jenny and Robin speak to the MTSS approach that we are implementing for the upcoming school year. Jenny or Robin, do you want to answer this question?
We've just been texting. Robin's going to take this one.
Okay.
Yes, of course. So I assume that what Pam was wanting to know was how we're implementing the multi-tiered system of supports across the district. And Jenny and Jen Colbreth and Beth Grady and I have been talking a lot about needing to increase our tier 1, 2, and 3 supports in terms of the curriculum, but also in terms of social emotional needs. So the MTSS model is very much in the works. One of the things that we've talked a lot about is that we really need to increase the number of tier 2 and 3 supports that we have. We have a lot, but we want to be able to quantify them and describe them and track them and know that we're, a child is doing an intervention for a certain number of weeks, and then we're reassessing and moving on from there. So the MTSS model, Pam, is very much a part of our blueprint. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Any other committee questions?
And weaknesses are and how we can best support them.
Pam, I think you cut out again.
I don't know what's going on with my internet, but yes.
Okay. Pam, let me know if there's anything else you need, and I'd be happy to help.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, well, I would like to thank everybody this evening who participated in this online meeting. As a reminder, we have our regularly scheduled school board meeting tomorrow night. We did not have enough time this evening to fit everything in. Unless there's any last questions, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I second the motion.
The roll call vote, Pam,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Ted. Ted's on mute. We'll come back to Ted.
It's yes.
Okay, thank you. Jonathan,
Yes.
Maria,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
and Jeff is a yes. Thank you, folks, and have a great evening.